Today is the launch of Intel's 14th generation CPUs. The 13th gen's had a little bit of a refresh. We have got some nice improvements, especially around the boost clocks. Today we're going to be using the 14600K to make a really nice white build. Going to keep it very aesthetically pleasing. That does mean though we do bring the price up. It's going to be about £2,200, but I'm going to give you some alternatives for other parts if you want to save yourself a little bit of money. I'll run you through the parts that I've chosen and why I've picked them as we go throughout the video, but let's crack on and start building. I'm first going to put everything that I can onto the motherboard, then we can put that into the case. And the motherboard that we're using is the Aorus Z790 Pro X. Got support for over 8000 MHz memory on XMP, got Gen 5 storage and graphics cards capabilities, loads of I/O, really like absolutely feature packed board, and in a lovely white colour as well to obviously match the overall aesthetic we're going for. Now this board's going to retail for £419, which is obviously high end. It's certainly more suited to the higher end SKUs of the 14th gen, but I have got some alternatives if you want something a little bit more budget friendly. We've got the Aorus Elite AX Ice, which is coming in at £289, obviously fitting the white theme as well. So let's first get our processor in. As I mentioned, this is the 14600K. We've got 14 cores on this processor. There's 6 performance and 8 efficiency. We also had a nice little bump on the boost clock. We go from 5.2 on the 13600K up to 5.5 on this one. Also had about 200 MHz bump on the base clock as well. So we'll get this out and then into the socket. I brought the latch up on the socket already, and just in case of opening this up, dropping the CPU in, carefully dropping the CPU in with the text the right way up. It's also keyed as well, so you can't put it in the wrong way. It's only going to go in one way, and then bring that latch down, and then the arm, little cover will pop off. Keep that in case you need to RMA your motherboard, and then quite a bit of force to bring that arm down, but then that's installed. So now for our memory, today I'm going to be using Kingston Renegade. This is 6000 MHz, a 32 gig kit of 216 sticks, fully RGB, but mainly a colour that matches the motherboard and graphics cards pretty much bang on. We're going to use the slots that are the furthest away from the CPU, but with a space between. That will allow the memory to run in dual channel mode. So we'll just line up the notch into the groove and then push down till we get a click on either side. Then just repeat for the other one. There you go, quite a bit of force needed on that one, but that's now installed. So for storage, I'm going to use my trusty Seagate FireCuda 530. This is a 1TB edition. It's got 7000 megabytes read and write capabilities. Now this is a Gen 5 supported board like I mentioned, but I don't have any of those on me, and also I think the price of performance of Gen 4 is so good at the moment, that's kind of a sweet spot anyway. So on this board we've got a little latch to take off the heatsink, which is really nice and convenient. Take off the plastic that's on the thermal pad at the bottom. Then we've also got a quick latch on this board, so we put the drive in at 45 degrees, then just press it down and it's locked in. Really simple. I love that we don't have to use screws anymore. Putting the heatsink back on, just take off the other side of the thermal pad. Then there's a little notch on the heatsink that just goes into the groove. Just push that in and then push it down till it clicks in again. Quite possibly the easiest installation of those parts that I've done yet, especially with the storage, no screws required. Not even taking the screwdriver out of my pocket yet. So now we can get the AIO out, have a look at that, and sort the back plate and things out, then we can get all that into the case. My cooler choice for this video is going to be the NZXT Kraken 360 RGB. I've done a full video on this on the channel, but it's a 7% Asetek design. It's got an LCD screen on there as well. It does come in at obviously a premium because we do have that screen on there. My more affordable option for this is going to be the Corsair H150i Elite Capellix. Great performance, again another Asetek design cooler, and you can also get the Corsair upgrade kit if you fancy putting a screen on it in the future. Now I'm also going to use an NZXT case for this build, and I might add an additional matching fan in the back. Just depends on the cable management and things, because we will need to use a hub if I put another fan in. But we'll get this out and ready. I used this cooler before, so there will be a couple of things you need to note. So for example, the first one, there's no thermal paste on this, so that will come pre-applied when you buy a new unit. So I will just add some extra on after. I need the Intel 1700 standoffs. We've got the nuts and also the back plate. And then we'll grab our back plate, turn our motherboard over and put it through the holes. Like that. Keep holding that while we turn it over. Then we're going to install our standoffs. These you can just do like finger tight, there's no need to wrench them down. That's the back plate now installed. We'll put that to the side. And we'll get our radiator ready. I generally put the hoses that come out of an AIO to the right hand side as you look at it in the build, so as you're looking at it now, something like that. So I'm going to put the fans with the cable side towards me so they can go down the back of the motherboard tray really easily. Then we can cable manage them afterwards. I'm also going to use a push configuration for these fans, especially as hot air rises and they need to fight it. These are just a standard design fan, so the NZXT logo is where the air is going to be pulled through, then it will come out through the kind of back frame. So we'll put these with the NZXT logo visible, and we'll dump out our screws onto a little magnetic tray to make life easier. I'm going to take a washer and a longer screw and screw them through the fans into the radiator. Okay, all installed. I've only done half the screws because this is obviously a demo PC. Case, I'm going to go for the NZXT 87 Flow RGB. I've obviously done a video on this on the channel recently. You can get the smaller version as well, which is the H5, if you want something a little bit more of a smaller form factor. But this is certainly nice and easy to build in because it's a little bit bigger. Just taking the glass out of the way. Now these fans do have a proprietary connector, so the cooler does come with its own hub, but I'm going to change the rear fan out for one that matches the rest. So I'm going to need to use a hub for that as well, because that again has the proprietary connector on. It does come included with an adapter cable for the front three fans, so that's not too bad. I'm just going to quickly swap this rear one out. So screwing in this additional fan, this is actually the NZXT core fans for anyone that are wondering. If you want to add any extras to kind of match the build that I'm doing, I will add them in the description. I'm going to install the motherboard into the case now, but I do want to put the power supply in after I've done this, because once I've got the AIO in, it can be a little bit tricky to route the EPS connectors for the motherboard. So we shall do that after. Bring this all down in. There is a little middle point that it goes into when it's securely in place. There we go. So now we're going to go into our box of screws. We're going to find the 632s and then get it all screwed in. So I'm now going to get my power supply installed, which I've got the NZXT C1200 for this. I've got a video on the channel already if you want to check it out. But it's an ATX3 compliant power supply, so we've got the 12-volt high power cable for the graphics card, so we don't need to use any adapters. I've got some cables pre-applied from when I last used this, so we've got the motherboard 24-pin, 12-volt high power. There's a peripheral for the SATA, which we're going to need to power the hubs. Then we've got the EPS 8 pins at the top there. Those are just a case of push those in. They can only go in one way as well, so you're not going to get those wrong. And then I'm going to lift this up to install it into the basement. We will have quite a few cables with this because we're using the hubs, and the proprietary stuff always takes up more space. But we will do some cable management later on. I'm going to install this with the fan side down, as we have got a filtered power supply grill underneath. Then we're going to use the hexagonal 632s to screw it in. The power supply screws do come included with the power supplies themselves, and then some cases do include them. This is one of them. So now that's installed, we're going to take the two EPS 8-pin connectors, run those through, and then plug those in because it's going to be difficult after the AIO, so we'll do that now to save some grated fingers. I'm going to connect the two 4s back together. The last motherboard that I used this on needed a 4 and an 8, but this one needs both 8s. So we'll just connect these in. There's one. And 2. To install the radiator itself, we need to take the top off. In this case, it literally pops off like that, really easy. Then we've got the dust filter under there as well. We're going to go back to the AIO bag of screws. We're going to look for the really small ones. We're also going to take some washers as well to screw it into the roof of the case. Little thing for doing this, I'm going to load one onto my screwdriver and then get another screw and washer ready, so I can just hold it in, do 2 corners, and then I'll be able to let go of it. Makes it a lot easier. I'm going to push all of these fan cables through now. Hopefully we'll be able to pull them all through, or most of them. The front mounts, because this is a 360, you can do a 280mm radiator in this case if you'd rather. And then screw this in. I think we'll go quite far to the back, and we can let go. So it makes it a lot easier doing the 2 corners, and now it's just a casual case of screwing the rest in over trying to hold it and do it all one hand. Not easy. So I'm just going to pull these fan cables through properly. The ones that are nearest the back of the fan where the EPS connectors are, I'm going to pull them around so they're kind of not bunched up, so they go straight through rather than along and then back. I'm now going to put in the cable that's going to be for the pump on the cooler. It's going to get real spaghetti, but I can run this one from the back, which is going to be a lot cleaner than trying to do it after the fact, so that's ready to plug in. Just need to plug in the 3-pin for the pump speed. A little bit tricky for you guys to see. I will try and route that maybe underneath and around, something like that, so it's nice and clean. Now we can put the pump block on. Now, like I said, you will have pre-applied thermal paste if you bought one of these new, but like I said, I've used mine already, so I haven't got any on there. I'm going to use Noctua's NTH2 for this one. Got a little worm of thermal paste there ready to go on. Now the in-tab bracket is on the pump by default, and then we're going to have the hose pumps at the bottom, because then the cable needs to plug in the top, and then we'll put that down on there. Now I'm going to take these nuts and we're going to put these on the 4 corners, but I'm going to go for the top left, bottom right, bottom left in an alternating pattern, like you've put a wheel on a car. I'm just putting these screws on just till they bite for now, and then we'll start screwing them down once we've got all 4 on. The order to screw them down is actually stamped on the Intel bracket as well, but I've used this previously, so it's not the right way around. So now we're going to screw these in a little bit tighter. So top left, do a couple of rotations, move to the bottom right, couple of rotations, top right, couple of rotations, then bottom left, couple of rotations, then just repeat that till it's tightened all the way down. Now we can take the little bunch of cables and plug that into the actual pump, clip side towards the motherboard. There we go. I'm going to do some cable management now, purely because once we put the graphics card in, it's going to be really difficult to do all the front panel bits, especially fan connectors and headers and things like that. So we're going to pass some cables through. First of all, got the 24 pin. This just comes up and through. Let's just see, make sure you can see that. And then that will bend around over on itself. We'll do that in a minute. Got the 12 volt high power cable is going to come up through the little gap in the case there. The front fans on this case and also the ARGB are all already on adapters, so that's nice and easy. They just need to be pushed through. And then looking at what's going on behind, I've got my SATA connected to the different hubs, and then these I've got the USB connections which need to go around to the other side. There's also, with the AIO, there's an adapter so you can put two onto one. We're going to need this for this case because we've only got two USB 2 headers, so now we can plug all those in without any problem. Fans for the AIO, they've got a splitter built in as well, so we just have to take them with the 4-pin PWMs and connect these together. Okay, so that's that one. Then we've got the proprietary connectors, so these will go into one of the hubs. Doesn't matter which one they're connected to because they're all going to go into the same piece of software. Then these just clip in. And we've got the remaining fan that needs its own one. Really silly having to put one in just for that, but we will do it. I really like everything matching, so we're going to put up with using another hub just for one fan. This board's got a lot of connectors on the bottom, so I'm going to try and plug everything in down there. Then it keeps the top clear because it can get quite messy pretty easily. So this just makes things a little bit easier because the majority of the connectors will be not visible at the bottom. I've also passed through the front panel connector as well. In this case, it's just one block, so you can just go doop, put it straight in, rather than being like fiddling around with all the different cables. Last but not least, to put through, we have got the USB 3 header, also got the Type C as well. So I'm going to do a little bit of cable management. I'm going to tuck the majority of this stuff in the basement of the case, get it all tucked down nicely, use all the cable management channels and things as well, so it's all neat. On the other side, this looks a lot worse than it really is. We've got the front panel, there's one pin missing there, so that's just going to line up on the connectors there. That's that one. We've got the USB connectors, there's one kind of in the center of the board, and then we've got the other one next to it. Just need to push that one back through, it seems to have come out. We've got the USB 3 that can just go onto there, like so. That's going to go up and then bend around like that. Try and bring that up if we can. Then the fan headers, they're all in a line on this board, so just a case of lining them up. There's an additional one that needs to be rerouted up further along. 24 pin needs to be bent around and over like so. There you go. A little bit bent, but it doesn't matter too much. So that's now all of our cables sorted. Now it's time to put in the graphics card. Today we're going to be using the RTX 4070, more specifically the Gigabyte Aero version with 12 gigabytes of GDR6. This was very kindly sent out by Scan Computers UK, one of the biggest UK retailers. They have a wide range of PC components, some pro audio and visual gear on there as well. Literally anything that you might need technology wise, they've got you covered. Then my alternative option for this one is the RTX 4070 from Asus, the Dual Edition. That's a little bit of a smaller card, but also white, so it will fit the theme. Just a couple of steps to do for this. We need to take out the second and third PCI expansion bracket. So just undo the screws, and we've got our graphics card here. We'll have a full video on this, by the way, if you're wondering a little bit more detailed information about it. That'll be after this build goes up, because it's just the way I'm doing everything because of NDAs. Then we're just going to open our latch for our PCI bracket and then lower this in place. Make sure it's lined up and push it in until we get a click. There we go. And then just take the screws that we've just taken out and put them back in. Now it's installed, we just need to get our 12 volt high power cable and connect it in. There you go, nice little click, and that's installed. So now we're done, and we can put the back panels on and the top and see if it boots. Then we'll get into enable XMP, and then we'll do some benchmarks. Okay, it's now the moment of truth. Let's see if the thing boots. I really hope so, because I'm running out of time for the launch. So let's, fingers crossed. Okay, we have some lights, that's a good sign. The RGB on the card and the actual RAM. RGB on the front fans. Do we have a post screen though? Finally got into the BIOS, took a few tries, it was so quick. But now we can enable XMP down on the side. I'm going to go for our first profile, hopefully 6000 will run. I'm going to go F10 and then enter, and hopefully get into Windows and we can do the benchmarks. So usually I just do a little screenshot of Cine Benchmark. I wanted to talk about it a little bit more in depth. As you can see, I had a multi-score of 23,924 compared to my 13600K. That's about a 500 point improvement, or 450. So although there's only 0.2 gigahertz improvement over the base clock, it obviously does translate pretty well into the points and scores. If you can see on the left hand side, we've also got in 4th place the 13600K, that's just the general rankings, with a much lower score than I had. But of course the silicon lottery is a thing, so we do have to take that into account. It may just be that I've got a faster sample. I've also done some thermal testing as well over a longer period of time. We had a high temperature of 71 degrees, and with the room temperature being 21.9, it gives us a 49.1 delta. So very cool in terms of the CPU. We are using a 360mm radiator though, which is probably more suited to the i7 or the i9s. You could get away with a smaller one as well if you wanted to. The Future Jordan here, just jumping in with a little bit of an update on the actual processors themselves. I wanted to add a little bit more depth to the content rather than just doing the Cinebench and then the free benchmarks. So I did run a few more tests. We got CPU profile. You can see we had about 300 point score increase on the 14600K over the 13600K. That actually gave me a key for the software after I filmed the build, so I thought I'd add this in. I'd much rather give you guys a lot more depth in the content itself than just rushing it out for the sake of it. Going on to the Blender benchmark, we saw an improvement of 9, 5 and then 4 samples. Going on to Geekbench 5, we saw a better score on the single core with the 13600K rather than the 14600K, but it certainly made up for it when we went on to the multi-score, as we got a nice increase of about 1,200. There's about a £10 difference for the 13600K to the 14600K, so my advice is if you're building a new system around the LGA 1700 socket, then it's worth getting the 14600, but if you're currently using a 12th or 13th gen system, then it's currently not worth the upgrade. Let's go on to the games. We're going to first do Starfield. I am running OBS in the background to screen record a better quality for you guys, so just bear that in mind. We'll knock a few frames off. We'll turn motion blur off though, because it's trash, and let's see how we get on. I am playing a little bit in the intro, so if you've not played for past like the first 10 minutes, then you might want to skip this one. It's been so difficult to run this game. Literally every card that I've tested, I've never seen anything more than like 80 frames. It's been ludicrous. Even the 4070 Ti, that struggled. It's been crazy. Very difficult to run this game. Hopefully we'll see DLSS in the future for it as well, because that's where the benefits are going to come in. That will all take time as well. So around 60 frames still, we need to take some cover. A lot of particles and things. 63, 61. Can't remember the button to mash. V, here we go. Obviously bear in mind I am running OBS in the background as well, so you might get 6, 7, 8 extra if you aren't running that. But if you're happy with console like frame rates, then it will be perfect. Otherwise I think you're going to have to wait for some DLSS. So on to Dirt 5, again everything is set to high 1440p. Then I'm going to use the built-in benchmark, so we've got a nice consistent test. That's a better score, 129.9 for Dirt 5, that's what we like to see. Those nice high refresh rates, certainly going to match a high refresh rate monitor. On to Apex Legends, and I crank everything for this game, minus the texture filtering, the streaming budget and also the spot shadow detail. Otherwise everything else is cranked up. And I'll run my little preset run that I do. We're currently sitting around 250 frames though, so I don't really see this one being a problem. Around 200 frames. But then jump straight back up to 283, so I don't think we're going to have any issues with this one, to be honest, which is nice because the last time I played it was on an art card and it was struggling. So 215, 201, 214, yeah, not a issue whatsoever. That's kind of why I don't really worry with Valorant anymore, because that's a much simpler game to run than this. So but yeah, anyway, over 200 frames for the majority, 167, little dip there, but you know, still well above the high refresh rate monitors. On to Cyberpunk. First of all, I'm going to go for a high preset without the ray tracing, because it just seems to cripple things. Turn all these settings off. I don't know why they come up. There's no AMD drivers on this PC. And the ray tracing off. So let's just run that down. First of all, because I know not everyone likes to use ray tracing. And 83 frames. It's quite a little bit lower than I was expecting to be honest. Usually without ray tracing it flies, but I suppose DLSS will be where we can really make the difference up. So let's turn on ray tracing now. We usually use the first 3. Very close to console-like frame rates, but certainly not quite what we'd like to see, being that we are playing on a PC, not a console. So let's now turn on some DLSS and see what we can do here. So frame generation, let's go for balanced. Sharpness 0.80 is what I usually use. We'll leave DLAA off from 60 to, let it balance out, 122, 125. So it's doubled our frame rate, yet remains looking absolutely stunning. So liking that, 130 frames. What if we were to go and run this without ray tracing? So for those of you that aren't worried about ray tracing but still want high frame rates, we will get around 170 frames a second. Wow, that's really good. So because we're not using ray tracing, we can turn it up to an ultra preset, also with the DLSS on. So you can have an even higher quality, yet still play at 150 frames. Really good. Like I said before in previous videos, the ray tracing is just what cripples this game. So if you're not worried about ray tracing, you can go for ultra preset with DLSS, even on balanced, and still get 160 frames. Well, colour me impressed. Crysis Remastered now. This is one of those games that some cards like and some don't, so we'll just run high to begin with. We'll have the ray tracing off as well. So we've got a high setting going on, no ray tracing to begin with. See what we're going to get. 170 frames at the moment. This feels really nice and smooth as well. So now on high ray tracing for anyone that's wondering about that. And we are sat 130 frames. Oh, I'm getting stuck. A lot better than I was expecting actually, to be honest. Oh, house is falling in. Zoom. Aim down the sight. 120 frames though. Still solid at 120. 115, a little bit of a dip there. Really good results actually. I was expecting the frames to be a lot lower for high ray tracing, so again, very impressed with the Aero card. Certainly doing a very good job. Last but not least, we're on to Far Cry 6. We used a benchmark for this, so it's nice and consistent. Let's see what results we're going to get on high 1440p. Average frames are 116 on Far Cry. I was expecting a little bit more, to be honest, but sometimes, like I said before, some cards just run other games better than others, so that might be one of the cases for this one. So let's do a little conclusion. I'll give you my overall thoughts on the build and tell you about a few changes you might want to make if you're going to build this yourself. So a little bit of an ad-lib outro for this one, but I want to get it all edited and ready for you guys to watch on the 17th. But I do love how the system came out. I think it looks really, really nice. I'm really happy with the parts that I chose for it as well. I did leave the RGB on the front and then the white inside. I think it works quite nicely as that kind of combo. The white was set by the last time I used it. The hubs kept the settings on there, so it just loaded up as white, but I think it worked really well. Of course you can obviously change this in the cam software to do rainbow, unicorn rainbow if you'd like, but I think it looks nice as it is, so I left it. Put a little bit of b-roll for anyone that's wondering about the full RGB. We had a high temperature of 71 degrees on the 14600K, and the high hotspot of the graphics card was 69.6, with the room temperature that was a delta of 46.6, so very cool on the card. The fans hardly spun up as well during the gameplay. It was only the more intensive games like Cyberpunk and Crysis and Starfield at the start that they really span. The other ones like Apex Legends didn't really notice it moving at all, but I think it's about a 60-degree threshold, so that makes sense. Things that I changed about the build, I think this is going to be more suited towards an i7, to be perfectly honest, especially with the spec of the motherboard and things like that as well. You could obviously go down the route of getting the cheaper motherboard and the cheaper cooler, but then upgrade your graphics card to a 4070 Ti. That's one thing that you could do to put a nice improvement into the system. The i5 is a really good processor for just gaming, Content creation, you're looking at the i7, the i9 if you want a bit of a all-around system. But if you're just going to be gaming, then the i5 is certainly where it's at. Cinebench result, we did see a nice improvement over the 13600K, so nice to see that that boost in the base clock has improved the scores. Any other things that you want to see me cover and things, then do let me know. I'll leave the system together for a little while. If anyone's got any further questions or things they want to know for benchmarks and things, I can test other stuff. This is, like I said, a build that's going to be hopefully going live on the 17th, so I want to get it out as quick as I can. Another little aesthetic thing that I will change in future is just put a white power supply in. I don't have any that are the correct wattage or that have the RTX compliant connector on at the moment, so I had to go with the black one, but that would be one little change that I'd make just to make sure everything's all white in the system. If you use all the cheaper alternatives that I mentioned throughout the video, then you'll save about £300, so you could of course put that towards the i7 if you're doing a bit of content work, rendering or doing anything like that, and you want to play some games as well, then that would be a good combination to do. Or like I said, you could upgrade to a 4070 Ti if you're just about the gaming. Let me know anything else you want to know. I'll put all the links for the products that I've used in the video in the description box. Big thank you to Scan at Intel and also Gigabyte for sending out parts for this NZXT. I think it's a really nice system, and look out for some more stuff with the card and also the motherboard in the future as well. I'm going to do something with the higher end SKUs as well, so get subscribed and ding the bell so you don't miss those. Thank you all for watching, guys. I hope you enjoyed the video, and I'll see you all in the next one.